Hello, and welcome to Voices of Privacy. Today, we have a privacy talk to discuss features on websites that can induce you to disclose your personal information, particularly on websites that you have not visited before. With me are my co hosts, Donna Werdelich, and our guest, Lior Zalmanson, who is a professor at Tel Aviv University, as well as having joint appointments at other universities in the United States. Welcome.
Hi, glad to be here with you.
Great to see you.
So, your study explains how websites have evolved over the years, and they really get into these interactions. They want to encourage people to interact with the website, and more specifically, by adding what you call social features. Can you describe for us what you mean by social features of websites?
Yeah, for sure. I'm talking about the like button, could be the share button, the love button, the comments. Now, I'm not stressing that this is, that Facebook or anything like that invented it. It has a long, long history, but I think the commercialization of it and the ubiquity of it all, that is relatively newer.
So, why do companies or websites offer these social interactions features?
So let's start talking about what the companies get out of it.
Mhm.
So this depends on their business model, but normally websites would like to keep their users for as much time as they can. For instance, to get exposed to ads. And they found out that this is a relatively easy way to do so by providing them a venue in which they could not only consume but prosume, produce things, and get recognition for things. So it gets people to become more engaged in a website. It becomes committed and loyal to a website, but in reality, it means spending more time. It's actually a very viable business strategy. So it does increase users' commitment and over time loyalty. And if the business model perhaps is like a subscription, then it can make them convert more fast and by in larger number to a website.
So, they become subscribers.
Exactly, paid subscribers.
I think it's fascinating. And I remember years ago when Facebook had the dislike button. And it's interesting because they have removed certain ones, added certain buttons, and it's really interesting how people relate to that.
So Facebook pretty much from the get-go was interested in positivity. They were really into the world of let's spread, as much positive sentiment as possible. But if you look at YouTube, YouTube still has a dislike button. They
Mhm.
changed it over time, so I think they've experimented with it quite a bit. And in some cases, they hid the number of dislikes that a video gets
Mhm.
because they were worried that in some cases, we've seen like revenge cases going on, and I thought it made into like a discouraging signal as well for other people. So I think it's anti-engagement in some way, if you think of long term.
So when you look through and you think about these social interactions, do you think it makes users more willing to disclose their personal information or their political choices or any other choices in that matter?
By design, those features, especially the ones that are kind of like more open, are intended for people to share something of essence, usually personal. So, right, as we give them more opportunities to voice, to vocalize, they probably in the end will share, or even if they don't share directly, for instance, their political agenda, you can sometimes tell, or at least now algorithms can sort of deduce based on, things that are correlated with it, like the TV that you like to watch, what news channel do you subscribe to, and so on. But my research actually wanted to test if what happens when you use this sort of naively, even like if you just click like here and there, does this get you into a mindset of wanting to share more personal information with the website later on, regardless of the content you actually now shared? And that was our surprise. Like we've seen that these websites initiate this social perception and the need and kind of like activate our need to belong, that in a later event, you will become more likely to share or to give away personal data. It could be like your name, where you work, what's your birthday, because you developed a connection, a relation. That was sort of like a cue that you received and made you want to, there's this wish to belong and to make connections.
And do you see any differences in terms of those connections? Does it vary based on gender, age, or ethnicity?
There are a lot of things that this depends on. So, for instance, I think about young people. They have higher tech literacy on one hand, but that also makes them more aware of some of the dangers and concerns. So we've seen the data goes in multiple directions, right? Sometimes high literacy or a high understanding of the technology makes you actually want to share more. You're like more geeky about it. You're more trust giving toward technological mediation. But sometimes it's the other way around. So I have been able to see that the stereotypes at least are not there. It's not that it's just old people or young people, or it's not that some gender or other is more trust giving. It actually really depends.
So if I can summarize what you said, it's not necessarily that the age has a major effect, but basically whether you're old, young, once you buy into the site through using the social features, then you're more likely to give them information later.
Yeah, people, even in a website they didn't know, they were able to immediately, just by the mere presence of sociality, of those social signals, they were more prone to share basically this private information. But it worked better or worse, depends on how you look at it. I mean, people shared more when it was also coupled with trust. So
Mm.
the website was more trustworthy, then those social features worked more, let's call it effectively. You need to both be trustworthy and social in order for this effect to occur at a greater scale.
I mean, I think with brands, just speaking from the marketing side quickly, trust is everything, right? Trust builds a relationship. And when you trust it and you know, and then you bring in the social interactions, like you said, and that just amplifies that. It's almost like to tell our consumers, pause before you click. Francois and I constantly say that.
What you just said actually talks a lot to the idea of literacy. And I noticed in your paper, you do talk about privacy literacy as a key element. But the big question, of course, is whose responsibility is it? How do we get users to be able to have that knowledge that they need to not just click on anything and to know if their trust is misplaced?
Yeah, that's like the $1 million question, because it's really, it boils down to both education and also the role of third parties. So I think it's very costly to educate, and it seems, again, as I mentioned, in the age of AI, it might seem like ineffective in a way, because all of the signals that we learn to take as truthful or more honest or more hard to imitate, they're all disappointing us. Basically, we find out it's super easy to cheat us in so multiple ways. So we sort of do have to resort to third parties that we think are trustworthy for us. And this might be a subjective and contextual question, right? It might not be that there is an entity that everybody should or may trust. It might be the case in which, for different people or different purposes of definitely different nationalities, those entities are different. I'll give you an example. One thing we looked at mostly in the discussion of the paper was like the role of the browser. They do let us know if a website we enter is suspicious,
Mhm.
but it then depends on our trust toward that entity. And I could imagine that different cultures, different nationalities have different trust levels at Google, or different question marks when it becomes like, should Google mediate, our trust giving and basically our approach to different websites.
Well, what you just did for us actually is part of that literacy. So we've already made one step towards educating users about what to look for on websites, particularly a new website they go to, in terms of what the social features are and what their implications are. So we really appreciate your time today and your insights.
Thank you so much. It was lovely to be hosted by you.
Thank you so much. Your brilliance shines through, and we really all learned a lot. And I know our audience will learn a lot too. So thank you.